You're watching Oscar Extra, the visual version of our pop-up radio channel. We have our experts in the studio to look at key elements of the Oscar Pistorius trial as we build up towards Judgment Day. I have Advocate Mannie Witz and attorneys Tyrone Maseko and Cliffy Alexander. We're going to have a look at the witnesses, and we're going to divide them roughly into two groups, the neighbours and the experts. So let me start with you, Mannie, and take on the issue of the neighbours. If we can put all of them together, they formed really the foundation of the state's case, didn't they, to indicate an argument, the screams, which the state says resulted in Oscar shooting Reeva. What do you make of the neighbours' testimony?
I think the neighbours are just ordinary lay people who happened to get up in the middle of the night. They heard something that disturbed them. They came along, and I think all of them, notwithstanding the criticism from the defence, were very open and honest about what they heard, and some of them as to what they saw. And I think really at the end of the day, that is as far as they could take it. But what the state called them for was very simply to show, if they can show shouting and arguing from a woman before the actual shots, before the shooting, that is what Gerrie is relying on for the premeditated murder. In other words, there was a plan. It was something that he planned, and he wanted to murder the deceased in this particular matter.
Tyrone, how do you feel the neighbours stood up to the cross-examination of Barry Rue?
I thought they did well. In retrospect, it's very rare that you're going to have, and it's common sense, that you're going to have a lot of people giving an account on one incident, and all of their accounts is actually going to be exactly the same. There's going to be some disparity, and quite frankly, it was different. It was the same time in the morning, but we don't know under what circumstances the different parties actually heard the noises. It's not like they were sitting there and thinking, well, is there a gun that I just heard? Did I hear screams before? Everything is happening all at once. So you do your best to actually give an account of that. So there is going to be seemingly inconsistencies, but I don't think that necessarily means that they're lying. The question is, does it mean that there's put together, the evidence, is it reliable? That's really what Barry Rue was concerned about and really wanted to attack. Not so much their credibility, they had no reason to lie.
What about the witnesses who were never called, that we were told would make an appearance, Cliffy? People who would be giving evidence about the Oscar screaming like a girl, more evidence possibly on the sound of a bat hitting a door not sounding like gunshots, or the fact that you could mistake them for sounding like gunshots. Do you think those kind of witnesses should have been called?
Well, Oscar screams like a girl, and we will prove this fact, is what Barry Rue said. He seems to think, and he mentions it in his heads of argument, David, that he called the neighbours the Ngetwas. Yes. And they both gave these high-pitched tonal screams. He believes that is why, and his reasoning in his heads of argument is that is why I didn't call them. You've heard this for yourself. However, I think it was Yontle Ngetwa and her husband, but I think there was also good for the state in that, as well as good for the defence, in that they woke each other up. The one woke the other one up when they heard a strange noise. So there was a bit of a bite to that. I think the one defence witness who wishes he wasn't called was Mr. Contradiction, Roger Dixon. Beer o'clock. He was all over the place with the greatest respect. I don't think he'll step into a court easily again. There was criticism about the fact that certain witnesses weren't called. Barry Rue specifically had a number of pages in his heads of argument where he had a go at the state, saying that they should have been conducted fairly. That would be the simplest way to put it. They didn't do it. They were only the list was only made available. The list of witnesses per se. These are the witnesses that you can call. Although they knew the witnesses well, these are the people that you could call. He elected not to call them for various reasons, particularly Hilton Botha. But he had a lot to say about the prosecution and indirectly Gerrie Nel, about the fact that he didn't call them. There wasn't any onus per se, although he argues to the contrary. You call the witnesses that are needed. You don't have to. There's no specific rule that states you have to call from A to Z.
Yes.
It would be a fool, with the greatest of respect, who would call from A to Z. You call the least that you possibly can.
Well, thanks to our experts. Look out for more analysis from our experts on aspects of the Oscar Pistorius trial.